Madam Speaker, there are two momentous events in the life of a parliamentarian that he or she never misses: to intervene in the debates on the presidential address and in the debates on the budget. Madam Speaker, I will quote what Edmund Burke said. Parliament, Madam Speaker, is more of a judgment than inclination. And Shashi Tharoor went as far as to say that the parliamentarian should have the freedom at large to express himself freely, irrespective whether he's sitting on the opposition bench or on the government bench. My task, Madam Speaker, has been made easier than I thought it would be. And I have to convey my congratulations to our friends on the opposition bench who have rightly unraveled this budget and has come with a conclusion. It's a huge disappointment. And we feel that we have been discredited on three counts: the political, the economic, and the social. It is not because there are a few palatable measures, Madam Speaker, that we can convince the public at large of the merits of this bill, of this budget. In fact, the demerits far, far outweigh some of the alleged merits. And you know, when you've been given an opportunity, and this government had an opportunity of a lifetime when it was returned, unfortunately, it marred the opportunity, spoiled the opportunity. And it was wasted. Its vote which had been wasted. And if you talk to members of the public, they express their disappointment freely. Expectations were high. But on the day they were sworn in, they forgot that they had an allegiance to the public. Arrogance, Madam Speaker. Arrogance was very high on the agenda. And as a new government which has sworn in, what is your first responsibility towards the public, to the international community? Is first and foremost to show respect, and the respect that has to be earned because it is not thrust upon you. What is it that you say? There was a government, it has served, probably there were shortcomings, a few or many, but in respect of its achievements, some of the good things that had been done, you don't go and fix it. As we say, you never fix something if it works properly. And I must tell this government, the worst crime they committed against the nation, when this government decided to do away with speed camera and penalty points. And I must tell them, today they have blood on their hands. If you have sweat in our hands, they have blood on their hands, Madam Speaker. And it's a responsibility that they have to carry forever. in trying to be too popular, they took a measure which went against the wish of the people. You cannot whip up emotion, play on the emotion of the people, exercise and influence with the consequences that there is a huge setback. This country deserves better. I don't intend to condescend to the level of those who deem it fit to make unwarranted attacks on members of the opposition. There is in politics, there is decency in politics. And if there is decency in politics, you never walk alone. But this government has chosen to walk alone, Madam Speaker, when it embarked upon political vendetta. Right from day one, when it's selectively and arbitrary, pick up on innocent people. If I have to highlight the number of arbitrary arrests, I would advise all of you, through you, Madam Speaker, to buy a copy of the book written by an editor-in-chief of a weekly. Then you'd realize the number of arbitrary arrests. You are a lawyer, my good friend. You should know what decency is, what the rule of law is, what human rights are. The number of arbitrary arrests. The number of arbitrary arrests. Let me tell you, the number of arbitrary arrests. I have in mind the likes of the daughters, the likes of the daughters.
No, we are not asking you, Honorable, right now. Allow the member. He has the right to talk. Allow him to talk.
The likes of the daughters of Rawat. I have in mind a couple by the name of Romali. I have in mind Ishukan. I have in mind the number of politicians who, for the wrong reasons, were arrested. I condemn anybody who was arrested arbitrarily, irrespective of the party of the day, because we are sending the wrong signals to the international community. We are under the constant watch and gaze of the international community. They have representatives in this country, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spoke of decency, and decency compels us to state facts and the truth. I have the highest respect for a country like India. We have special relationship with India. The bondage is very strong. But where the shoe pinchers, Madam Speaker, as a sovereign state, we have to make sure that under no circumstances there is any encroachment upon our territory, whether it is perception or reality. This is why I say to our Indian friends, a country which put a lot of premium upon the freedom of information. Right at this time, the items on the budget are yet to be voted. Yet what this government has done, I call it through perfid means, while the items on the budget are yet to be voted, the Indian High Commission, through subterfuges of this government, have started to invite bidders to submit their bids. And we have to highlight the number of projects, number of projects which are yet to be voted in this House. and through special purpose vehicles, money routed through the SBM, what we call the SBM infrastructure development. These are channeled to many companies, and tenders have already been called for, and we are asked to vote for items listed in the estimates of 2018-2019. I'm not talking of 1 cent, a few pennies. We are talking of more than 22 billion rupees, Madam Speaker. And let me tell you, we value our relationship with India. But I have to tell the High Commissioner, and it's best that he's advised, Mauritius is a sovereign state. You cannot call for tenders and tenders to be allocated only to Indian companies. Either we're a sovereign state, either we have a private sector, either we widen circle of opportunities for our private sector. This is Mauritius. Mauritius, Hede Samaram. But we're not going to be taken for a ride by any power emerging or existing, Madam Speaker. And I say it without fear or prejudice. I love India. India is a country where democracy flourishes. India is a great secular state. India puts a lot of premium upon freedom of information. That's why my message to the Indian government, not to bow to the whim and caprices of this government, not to think in terms of ethnic politics, but to react and act properly and leverage the friendship that we have and say loud and clear that we are equal partners. We stand shoulder to shoulder, be it with India, China, Saudi Arabia. And I'll go out, not out of my way, but to say that this government made a blunder when they delegated Minister Sudan to attend the Islamic Organization Conference. Either we're a secular state or we are not. And this is a country where there's rule of law, where there's decency. And I have said to whoever wants to listen to me, that when we tread, we don't have to tread cautiously, but we tread and walk as a nation, free at large, with our heads up. We walk because we believe in a hands-up policy and not a hands-out. That's why I say it's not because India is dishing out loan to Mauritius that we have to act like Oliver Twist and ask for more and more. Madam Speaker, either we look at engine of growth which have come to a standstill, either we make sure that those engine of growth work, function properly, or we accept that if we don't export, if there's no sound investment, we are going to die. Or forever, we are going to remain in what I call the middle income trap. But we can get out of this trap. We can get out of this trap, subject that there's transparency, that there's an accountability, that there's a roadmap, that we are coherent in our politics, that we put a premium upon reconciliation of social and economic activities. And we need India. We need India. We want India to be the main security provider of the Indian Ocean. But what I'm saying, Madam Speaker, we should be clear as to the presence of India in Agaliga. Are they there because we need to give them a place, or they are there because they will have a base? Madam Speaker, this country should never beg. We should walk dignified. as a minister and former Minister of Foreign Affairs, we had lengthy discussion with India, and we discussed lengthily with India, but there was mutual respect, be it at international, domestic, or regional level. In international fora, we were mutually supportive of each other. That's why I'm telling my Indian friends, we are grateful that they are going to construct a runway. We are grateful that there will be new port facilities. We are grateful also that they will use Agaliga to install a server which will be relayed with a central server in New Delhi. We are grateful that they've entered into a major defense partnership with the states, because we have to know what is it that we are trying to do. We have to know whether we've outsourced the safety and security of our maritime surveillance to India. If we've done it safe, there's no harm, because Mauritius on its own will never be able to exercise undue surveillance over a vast maritime territory of the size of Europe almost, bigger than Germany and other European countries, as big as 2.4 million square kilometers. We need India as a friend, as a reliable partner, but we don't want to have a big brother, little brother relationship. And I say, be it for India or Saudi Arabia, or for any other country for that matter, we have to put a lot of premium upon our sovereignty. And I've seen what has happened recently in Seychelles, when Seychelles didn't even have foreign currency to pay its contribution to regional and international fora. That's why I say, either we are a full sovereign state, which is going to defend its case, rightly so, before the International Court of Justice, or we become a neo-colony. And I don't want my country to be a neo-colony, Madam Speaker. That's why I say, yes, we want India to come and help us. But we want India to show mutual respect in respect of funds that are going to be dispersed. We want Mauritians to partner with Indian, businessmen. We want to operate in a win-win situation. It's precisely because we're operating in a win-win situation that we extend facilities to India, India first and foremost. That we extend facilities to India to conduct hydrographic and bathymetric studies. These data are a treasure trove. But at the same time, the data has to be shared. Why do I put a lot of emphasis upon sovereignty? When people of our country feel that there is encroachment, that we are condescending, it impacts upon the psyche. It impacts upon the psyche, Madam Speaker. And you know what the consequences of this are. Instead of looking at issues which are relevant, and we want India to come and invest, we want to invest in sectors which are productive. We want India to come and partner with us. And what is true of India is equally true, for that matter, of any other country. Madam Speaker, it is precisely because we need partners that we cannot be a world on our own or a world of our own. And the stark reality today is that no one owes us a living. The days of preferences are over. As I said earlier, either we export, we attract sound investment, or we die. And you know very well, Madam Speaker, we cannot live beyond our means. And the only factor that remains constant in life is change. But this government doesn't want to change. This government wants to have a quick fix solution. There's no quick fix solution. I didn't listen to the intervention of this young, budding politician, my good friend, Honorable Duval. I didn't listen, but I shared some of the views. I shared the views that he expressed freely and willingly to the nation. When we talk of contribution to a fund, call it Mauritius Fund, Sovereign Fund, what happens if the money is not forthcoming? What happens if suddenly, for reasons beyond our control, because there's been disruption of national unity, that national unity has been put at risk? And recent events have told us how fragile we are in this country. That's why when we speak, we have to make sure that we don't have hurt the feelings of one another, that there are mutual respect. This is a secular state, and compliance to the law is paramount. I recall when I was in Kenya, in Nairobi, attending the AGWA meeting in 2009. Then Mrs. Clinton Secretary of Foreign Affairs for the state, Secretary of State as they call it, praised Mauritius as a world in miniature, as a shining example of national unity, as a country which is emerging, citing Mauritius as a showcase. Where are we now? Where are we now, Madam Speaker? Better? My eyes. Better? Dream. And forever you shall dream. He's a nice cousin, I like him. I will tell him to dream and carry on dreaming. That's why we need to look at fundamentals, and my good friend, Honorable Rezautim, has been very explicit. We need to look at fundamentals, address fundamentals, look at the engine of growth, and not like Oliver Twist beg for more and more, Madam Speaker. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. When you come and say, we are opening up, of course I'm for opening up. Who doesn't want people who have the skills to come and invest in Mauritius? We want people who have the skills to come and invest. In fact, I will extend the hand of friendship to them and say, come over, invest in sectors which are emerging. Call it biotechnology, nanotechnology, or by whatever name. Call it artificial intelligence. But then I would invite our friends to read a statement made by the gentleman who was voted the the most outstanding young person of Mauritius, Dr. Mohabir. Go and read what he said. He's an expert in artificial intelligence. The talents are here. Why don't we appeal to our diaspora and extend the hand of friendship if there is a call to give passport to first, to second or third generations? Why not? Do you know the pool of talents among Mauritians overseas? What are we doing to attract those Mauritians? All of us who are here have relatives overseas who've done extremely well in different fields. And I appeal to all of us. First, give consideration to the Mauritian diaspora. Then to those who want to set up what we call the golden hose, inviting the elderly to come and spend winter in their country and come to spend winter the winter of the country to come and spend it here. Then, which remind me also of what happened in, I think, 1988. There was a Mauritian by the name of Arvin, who was a classmate of mine. Parents, well-known. Father, well-known scientific research person. And the mother, beautiful lady, well-known teacher, used to teach at Loreto Convent. Yes, if somebody's, we're all beautiful people. The speaker is a beautiful lady, there's no harm. Honorable, you know, in this country, there are only beautiful people. They are only beautiful people. No, how show respect. Ram created opportunities for you and you grasp those opportunities. And he was good. Show respect. All right, now we can talk. I have in mind Mr. Arvin, born in Australia of Mauritian parents, was denied a passport when he submitted his application. And yet, the Arvin family in Australia are much sought after for their expertise, for their grey cells. We are denying opportunities to our locals, our own blood. I'm not saying that we should not extend the hand of friendship to those who have the grey cells, who are very keen to invest in sectors which are emerging. But let us be clear in our policy. And when in 1983, when the issue of passport was raised, probably then by the opposition, there was some outcry that passports were given too easily to some entrepreneur. But then there was uncertainty in Hong Kong and Taiwan. The fear of China taking over Hong Kong, which was inevitable. The fear of one China, two economic policy. The fear of being unsettled by China. So ministers of the day traveled to those countries and invited those entrepreneurs to come. But they didn't invest in sovereign wealth fund. They set up enterprises. People were recruited. People became dignified. It is employment which brought men and women apart. When they have the power to purchase. When the parity of esteem didn't happen overnight, it happened through free education. Politics of empowerment happened through employment. This is why I'm telling my friends, let us look at the engine of growth and give up this Oliver Twist syndrome. I'm not saying that there's no room to attract investors. In fact, let me refer to some of the opportunities and measures which have been taken up since 2000 by successive governments. In 2000, permanent residence permit to those transferring 500,000 in a permanent residence investment fund, possibility to acquire residential property. And that Mauritius has always provided residence permit under the Immigration Act and work permit non-citizen employment restriction act since 1973. In 2002, scheme to attract professionals in emerging sectors. 2002, introduction of IRS to attract high net worth individuals to acquire residential property, about 500,000. In 2006, introduction of occupation permits, residence permit to retirees and permanent residents. In 2007, introduction of RES to attract foreigners to buy residential properties. We are talking of people whom we invited to come and invest. And when you invest, you generate employment, you generate wealth, you create a community, you allow this community to blend. I'm glad that foreigners today can live in apartments. But there are strict criteria applied to ensure that the prices of property don't overinflate. This is why I say it's very important that policies are clearly defined and not being done in a hush-hush manner. When I did listen to the speech delivered by Honorable Duval, but he said one thing, and which is true because he's a very practical and pragmatic young man, although I didn't like what he said during the electoral campaign, during the by-election, but he's a good man. You know, what did he say? That if you encourage people to come and invest in a sovereign fund, they become citizens at power. We don't know whether it's dirty money, money which is going to be spin dry, which is going to be rinsed, spin dry, and circulated in the monetary circuit of Mauritius. We don't know. And don't tell me that we will rely on Interpol or World Check. But under this government, they do away with provisions in the legislation. They amend provision in the legislation at the very last minute to cater for the needs of the likes of Sobrino, who has exploited dignified people working in different places, desperately trying to eke out a living in Angola. It's dirty, stinking money, and to a large extent aided and abetted by the former president of Angola. I'm glad that there's a new president. And I'm glad that he will raise, if he had not done so, the issue at the African Union. And I hope there'll be mutual legal assistance between the two countries. And I hope that all relevant information will be disseminated and given to the relevant authorities. As I said, we used to be a showcase in Africa. Today, our reputation has taken a huge setback. That's why I say tread cautiously. It's very important that we tread cautiously. We cannot be seen and perceived by our African friends as if we are giving in. While they are moving up the Human Rights Index, the Democracy Freedom Index, Mauritius is receding. And it doesn't augur well for Mauritius as a small island developing state, which is putting a lot of emphasis upon services sector. If you want to do justice to those young people who are talented, who can take up the rung of the social ladder, and who has achieved mobility because of investment made in education, you should not deny them the rights, because as a state, you have an obligation to protect them. And I will tell my friend in the financial services sector, minister responsible, make sure that you don't allow the EDB to do your job. You have to stand up to them. EDB cannot become a super ministry run by the inner circle of the Prime Minister. Either we have a government, we have ministers, or like an errand boy and errand girl, you have to crawl to people running the EDB, and I've been told that amendments are going to be brought to the legislation to turn it into a super ministry. You need to have your way, and you need to have your say. And as minister, I invite you to go to Africa. Visit the countries where we have concluded investment promotion agreement and where we have signed double taxation avoidance treaty. Make sure that the parliament ratify those treaties. Make sure that they understand the relevance and importance of taxing rights. Highlight Mauritius as a country which is conducive for investment. Use Mauritius as a stepping stone for Africa and for things to happen on the African continent. I'll tell you one thing. Why is it that we don't create a sovereign wealth fund? Use the huge reserves of the Bank of Mauritius. Make sure that we enlist the services of professionals and invest the money in portfolio where we'll have a return, an adequate return. Instead of saying and spending out in the budget that we have a huge foreign reserve of more than 10.5 a month. What is the point of keeping money under the mattress? Money is meant to be used and to be invested judiciously. And that's why I will come back to what was stated in 2015, and I will refer to an article which appeared in the newspaper. In 2015, this government had opportunities which knocked, but unfortunately they've allowed these opportunities to knock them over. We are talking of the price of commodities being very low. We are talking of money that could have been saved and used judiciously and not spent in a manner which is not conducive to transparency and accountability. And instead of using the money and invest in our manpower, make sure that we're able to send 50 young graduates to the best universities in the world. I don't intend to condescend to your level. Grow up. Grow up. You're still a kid. Grow up. Be wise. I know you only. I know you well.
Order, please. Order, please. Honorable Jagru, allow me to tell you that when you were intervening, the honorable member was silent. Please.
You know, my friend, let me give you sounder advice. Let me give you sounder advice. Okay.
Not to the honorable member. Please. Please proceed.
Let me, you know.
No comment, please.
You know, laugh, but the world will not laugh with you. Cry, and you will cry alone, my friend. Yeah? I'm not crying. I can measure up to any one of you and take you on any time you want. You choose the venue, and I shall be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Order, please.
You know.
Order.
Do you know what General MacArthur said? I have returned. Madam Speaker, through you, I will tell him what General MacArthur said. I have returned, and I shall return, and the party will come back in force. Madam Speaker,
Order.
let me come to an issue which has been raised and discussed forcefully, canvassed forcefully by Honorable Utim, the public sector debt. And my friend, in a very a nice way, put it across, and in the way and manner he did it, he reached out and had a great outreach to the public. I will refer to what he said, but let me first of all impress upon this government. Stop feeding the population with illusion that such level of spending can be sustained. And Honorable Jabu Ezra stated, in no certain terms, he stated that for 100 rupees earned. And when he said it, our friends outside understood very well that for every 100 rupees earned, 70 rupees has to be reimbursed to the creditors. Whether the percentage of the loan is 75% domestic or 25% international, part of it is redeemable or non-redeemable shares or equity. A loan, Madam Speaker, is a loan, and it has to be reimbursed. And if the loan is not reimbursed, I can tell you what happened to Sri Lanka. You know what happened in Sri Lanka? It lost control of a newly constructed port to China for failing to reimburse its loan despite the terms being favorable. That's the crux of the matter. That's the crux of the matter. But it's a fact, you know as well as I do. Let me then come to the main thrust of what I have to say on public sector debt. And it's real, the off-balance budget. That you cannot beat. Amazing what this government is up to. This is what I call the road to corruption. The road to corruption, where tender will not be called for, and tender will be tailor-made, as I've said, and the bidders will be selected according to the whims and caprices. I don't know from which kitchen, but this is the fact. And owing to the high budget deficit and Betamax, you've got to pay for it. You rescinded a contract which was legal. And you know what were the consequences of this, Madam Speaker? They don't hear what they are saying. Yes, on top of that, he's a senior counsel. But he's a good criminal lawyer. No? Yeah, not civil. Now, Betamax has not been computed in the public debt. But I don't have in mind only Betamax. And I hope that the ruling does not go in favor of BAI. And let me tell you one thing. We may forget about BI. Probably there were measures that needed to be taken to redress the situation. But what was done? We are talking of expropriation and nationalization. I shuddered with fear the other day when I saw my friend, the CEO of Omnicane, saying that his company owes more than 10 billion rupees. I shuddered with fear. And I said, I hope they don't expropriate and nationalize Omnicane. Because then the habit of expropriating and nationalizing, of hiving off, and then sell it for peanuts to the chosen few. Then the habit of doing that, Madam Speaker, and then they want to talk of the reputation of Mauritius as a country which we need to save, which we have to make sure is a country that we have to do our best to protect the interests of our citizens. So, in respect of the public sector debt, Madam Speaker, and my friend said it, the total public sector debt, and Betamax is not included because it is not in the contingency liabilities, has risen to a peak of over 65%. And if you bring in off budget expenditure, more than 70% of GDP. Honorable Duval stated that he would write, Xavier-Luc Duval, leader of the opposition, stated that he would write to the IMF to warn them of impending doom, to warn them of the manner, that this government is running the financial affairs of this country. But there is a commitment. We don't have to refer to and we know that there will be consultations under Article 4 of the IMF. We don't even have to forward a mail to them, because this Mauritius Statistics Mauritius, has to inform IMF on all budgetary aggregates in respect of revenue expenditure of budgetary expenditure. And I tell you, this as from this year, under what they call the Special Data Dissemination Services, I think, they have an undertaking to compute all public debt. They can't get away with it. They think they can get away, but there's a firm commitment. Mauritius Statistics will report. They cannot wash their hands off the problem. Not all the perfumes of Arabia will sweeten their dirty, stinking hands. Madam, as I said, the debt of public financial corporations such as SBM and BOBEC would be included. I don't want to repeat what has been stated by Honorable Utim in the manner with which public finances are being used. But there is some truth in what is being said by the common man. Not that they are demagogues, because they feel it, they sense it, and they know what purchasing power is all about. But when they hear that to construct a bus shelter costs more, almost 1 million rupees. Where is that money coming from? From whose pocket? Forget about the free consultants who are listed to address the problem of Ripaille Valton? Ripaille Valton, Terre Rouge Verde. Forget about whether, what's the name? Colas and Transinvest is one and the same. And they are one and the same. And they are the same people who enlisted the services of Professor Magnan. They are one and the same, and they are the same people. So my good friend is a very intelligent man. He knows how to wriggle his way. But the facts are, they are one and the same person, Transinvest and Colas. My friend agrees with me. He's nodding, he's giving me his blessings.
No.
So that's why I say, don't, Mr. Speaker, sir. What do I tell those people? And people react. Education. Madam Speaker, access to information and education is a right, and the state has an obligation. It's no longer a privilege. Those were the days when it was a privilege to buy a magazine. Today, no. Access to information, whether in Agalega or elsewhere, is a basic right. And you cannot treat people with contempt. You cannot treat people lightly. People react. And the day they react, mind you, learn what happened in Tunisia. Learn what happened in Tunisia. Draw lessons from the Tunisian experience. When you treat people with contempt, you treat them lightly. You don't bring them into the mainstream. You think the world belongs to you. You have to bear the consequences. thanks God, people can express their feelings, their anger through the ballot box and not the bullet, Madam Speaker. Let me tell you a little bit of the reaction, okay, and the feeling expressed by people from my constituents. Rosebell's still in my heart. What can you do? You know, Rosebell, I've been in Rosebell I've been in Rosebell since 1987. Except for 2014, I call it of great human bondage between me and that constituency. I know every nook and corner of that constituency. I took him by the hand, showed him around, my good friend, Minister of Agriculture. He knows very well. We campaigned together in 2010. We work as a team. But you know, life as it is, sometimes you've got to retreat, but I never surrender. I may retreat, but I never surrender. That's why I say, I shall return, my party shall return, Madam Speaker. So, between Rosebell and Belrose, between Katse and Katreborn, it's all one and the same. Same people, same problems, same heavings, same disappointment. And let me tell you what they're waiting for. When I will tell them that the PM has earmarked 1.2 billion rupees for NDU projects for construction and upgrading of drains, secondary roads, and there will be small sports facilities across the island. But then, where are the aggregates to construct those roads? Where are the aggregates to resurface? I've been told that there's no tar. But that's what has been reported. Temporary. Huh? Temporary. Okay. Okay. I hope the matter will be addressed. What do I tell our friends from La Source or junction of SS Avenue, Candace and La Louise, who have experienced flash rains and flooding? And let me, on the issue of flash flood and on the issue of flash rains and flooding. The other day, our friends sitting on the government bench were highly critical of the previous government, as if no money was disbursed, as if the problem was not addressed. I agree, you cannot do anything and everything all the time, but much has been done. You know what happened in countries like UK or France. As I say, at the touch of the finger, access to information is a right. What are you going to tell me? That the government in these places have failed to assume their responsibilities fully? We have to live with what we call flash flood and flooding and flash rain. But that doesn't mean that money should not be earmarked and disbursed up front. We have to disburse the money up front. But we have to make sure that there's transparency and accountability, that contracts are not awarded and rescinded simply because the contract was awarded by previous government, and stop projects midway. I believe in permanence de l'État. I told you what were the consequences of not applying with rigor the politics of permanence de l'État. And I told you, today you have blood in your hands. Worse than the days of apartheid, when the former Prime Minister shook hands with Botha. So that's why I say either we stand up as a dignified nation, a country which believes in a hands-up policy, and let us give up what I call the hands-out policy. Madam Speaker, you and I have worked together. You were, Madam Speaker, former PS at the Ministry of Agriculture. And when I became minister in 1995, young, little bit at a loss, but I lent my ears. And I bowed to those who had sound advice, who could dispense sound advice. And I have to pay tribute not only to the former Prime Minister, Dr. Navin Chandraramguram, but to Paul Raymond Béranger. And I recall he was Deputy Prime Minister. He convened me to his office. We called the former Solicitor General, Mr. Vanchard, late Mr. Vanchard. No. I'm sure. No, Mr. 1990. Are you sure? Huh? Vanchard? Who was it? But anyway, no, huh? Okay, but he came to the office. And the problem of the ex-stevedore workers was a great preoccupation of the leader of the MMM, then Deputy Prime Minister. And we worked together. And he came up with a relevant solution. And I told him, don't worry, we would act. And of course, Cabinet approved the decision taken. And today, ex-stevedore workers, those who work in the sugar bulk, the first in, last out, today there is what I call redemption. Entitled, they had been entitled to a proper pension. And it's a pension of a lifetime, Madam Speaker. But we did more. In 1997, you were there, Madam Speaker, when we decided to accelerate the pace of reform. And we brought about the centralization of factories. And why was it done then? Because we encourage sugar, the corporate sector, miller, planter, and all the planters. We highlighted to them the merits of centralization of sugar factories. Why? To amortize the costs at the time when the price of sugar in the EU market was very remunerative. I feel a bit sorry for MDK, which came last. But we have to pay tribute to them because they have built a factory which is a sugarcane factory. As for the planters, Madam Speaker, you recall the fight we had with our friends from the private sector when we decided to revise the apportionment ratio and to be more favorable to the planters when we revised it from 76-24 to 78-22. And this decision gave the planters an additional sum of money, more than 100 million rupees as a result of this decision was disbursed to the sugar planters. But we went further, Madam Deputy Speaker, sir. I went all over the country, canvassing the small planters to regroup and to highlight to them the importance and relevance of restructuration of the sugarcane industry. We lost in 2000. I see whenever our good friend, the Minister of Agriculture, intervenes, I'm not going to hit below the belt. Don't you worry, you can relax. Enjoy armchair comfortability. And you know, when I hear him talking on the sugarcane industry, heaping praise unnecessarily upon the Prime Minister, what a joke, game for a laugh. Let me tell you the genesis of the voluntary retirement scheme. The genesis of this, we have to pay tribute to Mr. Mayor. And he came up with that proposal when Saint-Antoine ceased its operation. Let us give credit to where credit should be. And Sugar Authority learned from the experience of Saint-Antoine. Of course, they had to work together. And Madame Delou, I recall, was not keen for the closure of Saint-Antoine. They waited for him to go overseas and got one of the errand boys, then Honorable Gobardon, one of the errand boys, in the absence of Madame Delou, to approve the closure of Saint-Antoine. Not that I'm against closure. Of course, there should be closure of factories. But don't come and say that Pravin Jagannath was the architect of VRS1 without, and I feel sorry for my good friend. We grew up together. We were good friends. And I feel sorry for him. No mention was made of my good friend, Honorable Boda, as if he never assumed that portfolio. Set aside completely. I don't know why. Why? Do you scare people within the rank and file of your party? Why? Why?
Order.
So,
Order, please. Honorable Jagru. Honorable Jagru. Honorable
Madam,
Jagru.
you know, in politics, let me tell you one thing.
Last time, Honorable Jagru, I called you to order. This is the last time.
Let me give him a piece of warning. We know when he was not appointed minister, how he was going to dig at the Jagannath family. We know that. But let me tell him one thing. Between the tree and the bark, don't insert your dirty fingers.
Honorable Jagru, I told you this is the last time. Now I think I'll call you to order.
Sir,
if you continue, I'll have to take sanctions.
Speaker, we've talked of regrouping of planters. Of course, the process was an ongoing process. And we know today what is happening on the world market. Even Brazil has had to close a few factories. But then what did Brazil do in respect of the drop in the price of sugar when India and Thailand has flooded the market? What did Brazil do? Shifted from sugar to ethanol production. What are we saying? At a time when there is undue hardship being faced by this sector, which to me, King Sugar is here today and has to stay. A sector which has the sugarcane, which has a multifunctional dimension. I appeal to members of the government. You need to have the interests of all stakeholders at heart. You cannot set aside the interests of workers. You cannot set aside the interests of small planters. And we need to conduct a study and commission a study on the premium and value we put upon the standing cane. And if you refer to the Mass report, which was commissioned under the Labour government, there is a lot of emphasis being put on the standing cane. But our friends from the corporate sector, they have to understand that this country belongs to all of us. We are one and the same. We stand together. There's an organic link between corporate miller, planter, and workers. Don't forget there was a time when there were more than almost 40,000 working in the sugarcane industry. Now, the number has been reduced to 4,100. What is wrong? Why is it that what was spelled out in the blueprint on centralization cannot be implemented? It has to be implemented in toto. They should be entitled to the rights. These rights have become acquired. And when they met the then minister, the Minister of Agriculture, it was decided there and then that those rights are acquired rights. And these rights are here today and here to stay. And while I talk of also rights of workers, I appeal to the other young gentleman, the minister is not here, whose father I know very well, Minister Labour, Culture. And I appeal to him not to concede an inch or an iota to the corporate sector and amend the Employment Rights or Relations Act. The right to strike is a legitimate right. It's a God-given right. It was acquired after hard struggle, and that right cannot be removed. It's a legitimate right. The state has an obligation. The country does not only belong to the corporate sector, it belongs to one and all. I can't understand why our friends from the corporate sector are asking for 1.3 billion every year to be spread for the next 5 years. My good friend, you are young. You're on the learning curve. Learn and acquire. Live and learn to let live. Zip your lips when it is called upon to zip. Yeah. Let me come to this report, Madam Speaker. The joint technical work on sugar. Lopsided. Corporate-centric. And don't tell me the minister did not delegate his PS to co-chair that meeting. The workers, representatives of the workers, no representatives of the planters, were not even invited to submit a memorandum. Planters, workers, none of them. And did you see the recommendation made? What I'm saying, Madam Speaker, what I'm saying is that in respect of byproducts, there should be fair and equitable distribution. In respect of renegotiation of IPP, the planters need to have its fair share. Molasses, bagasse, ethanol, because there is no cost in respect of production of molasses and bagasse. It's only when the value addition. And I make an appeal to one and all. We are here today and here to stay. This country is a great little country. It belongs to all of us. And I appeal as patriots, I appeal to all of us to address fundamentals, to look at the engine of growth, to make sure that we reignite those engines of growth. Let us look at the level of preparedness of our people. We need to overcome, and to overcome, we have to come together as one people, one nation. Thank you very much.